Spawn Camp Council presents Campfire Tales, our deep dive into gaming, media, and pop culture. Pull up your favorite chair and warm up next to the fire of information and entertainment as we take you through all that is good in the world. Tonight, Solid Scorpion Z, King Dawes, Old Dirty Robot, and me, Adam 12, bringing you an answer to one of the most difficult questions in Dungeons & Dragons. Should I multiclass? Our guest tonight proves not only that you should, but goes all the way to podcasting how and why. Jared, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about Monsters and Multiclass.
Yeah, sure. So it is a podcast dedicated to really, I mean, we say everything and anything Dungeons and Dragons related, but realistically, we have two segments. One is a multi-class deep dive where we're going through every single possible two multi-class mix-up here and just breaking it down mechanically and role-playing wise. Seeing if there's anything of substance there, if there's things that people generally miss, and what traps you might fall into when trying to do such a thing. Then otherwise we go into the monster portion where it's a lot of DM help, how to run monsters effectively, interesting ways to do them, maybe ways to integrate the lore that you wouldn't think of just looking at the stat block.
Okay. How long have you guys been doing it?
I think we're approaching 2 years in November.
Okay, very good. So, when you're doing this, what goes into deciding like which classes you're creating for an episode, and how do you compile what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, for putting together the class, we originally started off like rolling 2d12, and we're like, oh, this is such a good idea. But you spend a lot more time rolling than actually, doing anything else as you just go through ones you've already done like 20 times. Mm-hmm. So what we've actually started doing is I just have like a big Excel spreadsheet with numbers for each one, and we just roll it random every time, like random number between 1 and 27, and then we just go from there.
Okay.
As for the rest of whether or not a class is good or bad or whatever, a lot of studying from at least Kevin and I.
Yeah. What about, so there are three of you in the cast?
Yes, yeah, myself, Kevin, and Will.
Okay. And how do you guys meet?
Playing Dungeons and Dragons, of course. So I think about almost 6 years ago or so was my first time playing D&D. Kevin and Will had already known each other. They've been friends since like elementary school or middle school or something. So they've known each other forever. But I was brought in to their table by a friend as they were taking their first stab at 5th edition. And I was, obviously taking my first stab at D&D as a whole.
Okay. And so you guys met live, like at a table at a comic book store or something like that? Is that...
No, it was at a friend's house, actually. Okay. My friend was dating the DM's little brother. Yeah, that's a quick way of putting it.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, they're like 7 years older than me, so we grew up in the same area, but no way I would have known him otherwise.
Okay. Of you guys, like, who is the easiest to deal with? Who's the most difficult when playing and when podcasting? Like the interpersonal relationships you guys have when you play and what you do when you're podcasting. Like,
yeah, so we're all like really close friends, both in and out of the game and podcasting and whatnot. So to say that either of them is more difficult, they might get mad at me. But no, realistically speaking, Kevin is.
I'll start with the Kevin abuse. I swear to God.
No, it's the other way around.
Enough of it.
Where I think that's from a podcasting perspective. Let's talk with that. Kevin and I are like doing a lot of the actual like work of the show, whereas Will has just decided he wants to show up and talk, which works great because he's hilarious, and without doing any bit of studying, he can just throw out a whole bunch of knowledgeable facts and whatnot. But it definitely, he is the more difficult one in the sense of, we get together every other week and it's like, all right, we're going to do this multiclass and this monster. And he's like, oh, we're doing that multiclass? I hate that one. I'm like, all right.
I had nothing prepared, but here I go.
Right. And it works. So, I mean, that's fine. We only need two of us to really know what we're talking about and for him to bounce off that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, from a table perspective, I mean, I've been playing with them for 6 years now with basically every single one of my games, except for like a few breaks here and there when, for whatever reason, we couldn't get together. I couldn't imagine not having a table with those two. But they have such different play styles that I once again say that Will is a little bit more difficult, only because he takes the same mentality of podcasting as he does playing at D&D. When I say, hey, we're going to play a campaign that really heavily involves backstory and is going to be about character growth, and I want to like get into those deep emotional cuts that we've never really tried to do before, he goes, cool, I'm a furbolg, I don't have a backstory. And he's true neutral, so no opinions on anything. And
Sounds familiar.
yeah. It works well. And say again, he still role plays at the table, but you know, he's an ass, and that's why we love him.
Do you guys like rotate DMing around, or you know, does some one person do all that? Mostly?
It's mostly me. Kevin did DM for about a year, but when we lost our original DM, I decided to take the reins. So I've been doing that for 4 years now, and Kevin DM'd once, but he recently had a kid, so there's no chance that he wants to put campaigns together. So I currently have the reins for the foreseeable future.
I got you.
That's what we did. Solid was our first, because we've been playing for what, like 2 years together now, D&D?
No, it was longer than that, dude.
You think
Longer
so?
than that, like 3
really?
years, 3 or 4 years.
3.
Yeah.
So Solid started us out. And then we've been bouncing back and forth between Justin, Adam, and myself, kind of DMing little one-shots, and Adam and Solid have had bigger campaigns. So right now we're actually in Adam's campaign, doing a Theros.
Oh, how are you liking that setting? I know nothing about it.
It's awesome. I like it a lot.
It's very cool. If you're into mythology, like Greek mythology at all, this is perfect. This is such good material, and it's a different play style of D&D. I mean, you're like little pawns in a big game. So
Definitely like that aspect.
Yeah, speaking of play style, would you consider yourself more of like a power gamer, or like a min-maxer, or like, you know, I know you're DMing right now, but when you are playing, is there like a go-to race and class you have, or multi-class that you kind of go towards, or
From like a general perspective, I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't min-max. I mean, I obviously do. But that's just like part of the game to me, is just trying to put together the pieces to be as strong as possible. But part of the min-max is the min. So it's very much so like some of the things that I do really well, I'm going to do. Let me rephrase that. The things that I do well, I want to do very well. The things that I'm bad at, I'm going to be very bad at.
Awesome.
And that's the way I want it to be, is because I want to see those things exploited by the DM, so that I get kind of put against the ropes sometimes. You know, and that said, it's all to facilitate the role play, in my opinion, where it's not just like, oh, I want to go and I want to like just be in combat, and I want to have all of these times where I'm winning time after time. It's not about winning. It's about making a fun story. So that means losing a lot.
Right. I know that was like, we always we've done, like I said, a few campaigns now, and Solid typically does a pretty min-maxy style, or like an OP style, like psionics and shit, and just all the garbage stuff that, you know, is like overpowered moon druids and all this stuff, and it's like, okay, we're used to that by now. And and I like to do like kind of like Mimi builds, I guess. I love divination wizards. Like halflings are my go-to.
But divination wizards kind of amazing. So that's not totally fair. Them important dice.
We just had a little. We were in Adam's campaign. We had a little PvP section on a ship, and it was just a first to draw blood. And my divination wizard most certainly took advantage of those rolls and came victorious. So. Oh,
you got a 20? Actually, that's a 2.
Yeah. So, you actually fail that. So.
You say that like it was a great thing, but I do remember like I cast fireball and I was like, "No, your boat's on fire."
Yep, that's very true. Yeah, wood burns.
You committed suicide after that.
Little do I know, wood burns.
I'm sorry. The goal was draw for his blood. It wasn't not set the boat on fire.
You said nothing about casualties. You didn't say anything about collateral damage. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that there's nothing wrong. Min-maxing in itself has become a bit of a dirty word. So I know Treant Monk, if you guys are familiar with him, he always says like, oh, it's not min-maxing, it's optimizing, and that is perfectly acceptable. I think the difference really does come down to, do you ignore role play?
Right.
And, you know, there's still nothing wrong if you don't want to. If you want to play D&D like a war game, who cares? You know.
From what I've seen is I'm fine, like as a DM, I'm fine with min-maxing as long as it's not disruptive. Like if you want to build this crazy bugbear, polearm, master, sentinel, just stupid melee character, like fine, but don't be disruptive and have like issues at the table with other people. And you know, it's really everybody's game at that point. And who am I to tell you how to play? If you want to min-max like that, there is, like you said, a min to the max. So
and above all, know how to play your character, because I've seen some people get like these really crazy builds that they put together, and it turns out they only work because they're cheating, or just, you know, they don't understand a
just
rule
ignorant.
correctly.
Yeah, that actually brings me to my next point. Now we actually ran into, like, we tried to incorporate like an artificer, which has a lot of complex kind of features to it.
Right. The new one or one of the old UAs?
The new one, like the actual material.
The
power armor.
Yeah. The armor. Okay, so
that was actually an Unearthed Arcana, so that one's not completely official yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now have you, at what point do you kind of say like too much in terms of multi-classing? Like, is there a certain race, or is there a certain class combo? Is it like adding a third class? Is it kind of,
I definitely don't set any specific limits. Like, you know, it's impossible to set these hard and fast rules, because somebody's going to come with like a good reason to get around them. That said, I do always make sure that the multi-classes are justified from a role-playing perspective. Recently we had a player who is a Eldritch Knight wanted to go into Warlock. This was definitely not an optimal move because he had like no charisma, but anyways, he got his charisma up to where he needed, and he's like, great, I want to go into Warlock. And I'm like, that's fine, but this means you're going to have a patron now who's going to expect things from you. So you get that tasty Eldritch Blast, but something's going to happen from it. Whereas Kevin was playing a rogue paladin, an arcane trickster rogue vengeance paladin, which I loved and hated so much. So much damage. But he was getting tired of it because the entire play style was run up to something, hit it really hard, and he wanted to just try something new. So we worked it out together, and I told him, like, hey, if you just want to get rid of all of your paladin levels and move it over to a bard after this like pivotal moment in his character's story where he completed his oath of vengeance, then, you know, great, let's do it. I'm not here to be like a total stickler on the, I guess, progression of things, but I do want to make sure we try and have it make sense in universe.
I was listening to your Paladin Warlock episode, and you brought up a good point about paladins, especially. Like, they're not clerics, they're not a holy warrior, they just have a strong conviction to something. So that kind of works where you can be like a paladin, and your conviction to avenge your whatever that just got slain can be so strong that you eventually make a pact with a devil or something to gain more power. So that like thematically fits really well, as opposed to something, you know, you're a paladin, but hey, I want to multi-class into a sorcerer just because. You know, there's no thematic reason behind it. You know, that would be my kind of limit there. Is I don't want to see a fighter wizard just because you want to have two portent rolls. Like, you need to have some reason why that multi-class happened.
Right. And if it's one like sorcerer, where it's like, you know, you can't actively decide you want to be a sorcerer. You don't really get that choice.
Bloodline. It's like, oh, okay. Where was that before?
So a lot of times I especially in the show, I'll like look down on the sorcerer multi-classes, because it always feels just like the only reason you're doing it is because, well, it's a good multi-class to go into.
You just want meta magic. Just admit it.
Right. That said, I've come around a little bit. It's more of just, you have to work with your DM and now set up this like this whole concept of like, you have this power that you don't know how you got or why you have it, and you have to like learn to control it, and maybe it's a little unstable in the form of like wild magic surge or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, it's again always just I love my players working with me as the DM because I want to make these like really crazy, cool, over the top stories. So anytime that they have like a neat idea, I'm going to work with them and try and find something for it.
I know the three of us, Justin, Adam, and I, we typically tend to lean pretty heavily towards the rule of cool as opposed to like the raw stuff, because it's boring to play literally by the book. You know, if you want to do something and flourish your kill or jump off the wall, backflip behind somebody, get advantage because you're a rogue, and if you make some extra rolls on that and flourish it really well, you know, do your athletics check and maybe an acrobatics check after, then totally for it.
Yeah, I get that. Say, I am very much so a champion of rules as written, at least, and that like is hard to like say, but in the sense that I'm not going to say like, oh well, you know, you're 30 feet away, but the spell has a 25-foot range. I guess we'll let it happen because it'd be cooler. I don't ever do that, right, because I think what makes the actual game cool is like when you do all of those things within the rule set.
Right.
So I guess it's a little more of a stickler thing in combat than outside of it, because outside of it, there's tons you can do and miscellaneous things you can make up. But the main thing is that we've all agreed as a table that if something happens outside of the rules, because I as the DM just kind of let it happen because I think it would make for a better story, it makes the person who did it feel less good about what they did.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Yeah, that's fair.
Where it's like I want to you know, have that accomplishment because I earned it, not because it was given to me.
Yeah. In clarification with the kind of what we do is it's always based on the die. So
yes,
if you do something cool, then it's going to be down to the dice. And you know what? It's going to be a lot harder if you do something kind of flourish.
Right.
Yeah. You most certainly could fail this and will fail this.
Yeah.
You may all want to think collectively on how you can make this work, because you know, you do have the help option. So let's see what we can do with that.
Yeah, and I think what it really is the important distinction is there a win condition and is there a lose condition? You know, because when you just set it up where everything is a win condition, that's when it becomes boring to me.
Yeah, I agree.
That's funny you say that, because in our Theros campaign, we actually died in the first session because we didn't take the main quest, and Adam's just like, oh, I guess you're all dead. And we're like, what the fuck? That's never happened before.
Come down and just smush you. Nope, sorry.
Exactly. His followers attack you, you're dead. And we're like, what? He's like, do you want to restart? Okay.
Get that extra life. Can I use that right now?
Yeah, right. I don't think we knew what we were signing up or not signing up for. So
yeah.
Well, that's why it's always important to have that session 0 or whatever your equivalent is. Say I very extensively discuss what type of campaign I want to run with my group to avoid those situations, though it might happen regardless once you all sit down and play the way that you want to play. But I'll say like, all right, here is the thing that I want to do. If your character falls outside of this, don't bring it to the table. Which, I mean, it limits people a little bit, but it's never too drastic.
Sure.
So the title of the podcast, Monsters or Multiclass, what part of it do you enjoy more?
That's a good question. I would honestly say the multi-class stuff, only because I feel like there's a lot out there that hasn't been explored. I mean, most of the times when I'm researching before one of these shows, I do, you know, I look up the multi-class and see like, what are people saying about it, you know, and kind of get a feel of things. And very often I'll see people just be like, that sucks, or, you know, that's good, or whatever. And I think it's really fun to try and think of ways that people just haven't thought of already. We recently did the Barbarian Artificer multi-class, which I think just right out the gate, anybody's going to be like, that sucks. And
sounds like it sucks.
Right. You're mostly right. But I put some things together and I was like, you know what? This could actually be a pretty cool character. Is it going to be the most optimized? No, not really. But like, there's interesting things for it. You know, it gives the barbarians some uses of their bonus action, which they normally are just kind of sitting on. It makes the Artificer more tanky. So it's like
crazy high AC on the Artificer side.
Well, no, but I won't get into that if you want to. There's a whole hour of me talking about it. I won't get onto it here.
These guys have been playing for a while, and I'm a relatively new player. And I guess I was curious, for somebody who wants to dip their toes in multi-classing for the first time, what would you recommend? Like, what's a good starting point for a new player?
Always going to go down to like, what are you playing right now to start? So how about you answer that? What are you playing?
Yeah. Okay. So he mentioned the Bugbear.
Don't say his
Polar
actual
Master.
name, please.
Yeah,
Yes, you have to.
So, you have to say his name.
I really enjoy the flawed character, and in some ways, I like to fail more than I like to succeed. I like to see what happens when you fail because these guys are really creative with it. So I am Thick Gurgok, and he is a bugbear that has just moved out of his parents' house and joined the party. And of course, at Theros, you have a god, so I'm fairly bloodthirsty, but flawed in that, hey, I'm trying to work out my own personality and what everything's about. And I know that's probably
First foray into the real world.
First foray into the
Very
real world,
angsty.
absolutely, very angsty, yeah. Yeah, which might not honestly fit in that world, but hey, I'm doing what I know how. So, the class is barbarian, I think.
No, you
So
took
it's
a.
You took a
You
monk.
took a.
You're a
You took it.
monk.
No, he took a Battle Master fighter.
Yeah, Battle
Oh,
Master
okay.
Fighter. That's it.
Yeah.
Last time was the monk.
I did.
Know
I
your,
did a
know
monk
your
last time.
characters.
Look, hey, yeah. At this point, I'm so new at this. It breaks my heart when I lose a character. Like
Here I am sacrificing characters left and right.
these guys just burn through characters. And I'm like, no, I like him.
It just depends on the person, I'm telling you, because I'm the same way. Again, I've been playing for 6 years now. I don't think that feeling goes away. If I have a character that I care about, I'm gonna care about it. That said, if I'm playing a one shot, I'm gonna get extra silly. But onto your point of where would you go from like a Battle Master fighter? Funny enough, that's like the one that if somebody's like bored with their character, that's like the easiest one to just be like, okay, go fighter Battle Master. But how I would think about it is always about what does your character like? And for a character that you're saying is just getting into the world and trying to figure out who they are with themselves, I'd think about what would your character like? I mean, give them some things that they legitimately find interest in. Something that I'd pull from just because of bugbear lore is the fact that they're generally considered extremely sneaky. And that's like their whole thing is that they are these hulking badasses, but at the end of the day, they are silent killers, which would be a great transition into Rogue if he started embracing his bugbear heritage. Or maybe there's the opposite side of pulling away from that and just being like, I just want to be a sadistic murder hobo. Great, go into Barbarian and find something that helps you channel that rage. Paladin is one of my favorites, which is more of going that line of, you're really committed to something and you found something that actually gives your character purpose. So you're going from this kind of run-of-the-mill fighter where you're just like, I don't know, I'm just going with the flow, to now having like a really committed ideal. And that's just around the martial aspects where there's tons you can do. So it depends on which direction your character is going to go. But that said, if I didn't prove it already, I could talk to you for hours about which ways I'd suggest.
I definitely try to lean into the sneaky sneak. But it's more like, hey, I'm going to try to hide behind this rock that I'm technically 2 times bigger.
Well, if you want to start getting good at it, Rogue
I don't know
is
how
where to
many
go.
times in the campaign I've heard, I'd like to go there stealthily. I want to move across the room stealthily.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing. These guys have been incredibly patient with me as I kind of work my way through the world of D&D. And you kind of mentioned your start, but what's your first memory of D&D? Was it just an invitation to play, or?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's all I remember was because like I don't remember like always imagining playing D&D or something. I'd barely really heard of it, but my best friend in high school was like, "Hey, you want to come play? And I was like, are you having fun? And she's like, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm like, great, let's go. So that was like my first foray into it, is having no idea what the hell was going on, sitting down and having the DM say, do you want to play Goku? And I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. I guess I used to like Dragon Ball Z, so why not? So then he gave me a... Oh, hey, yeah, there you go. No issues to it now at all. I just don't watch it as much anymore.
No.
But, and he's like, here's a way of the 4 elements, monk. So that's cool. And that was it. I was like, this is awesome. I mean, seriously, the very first thing we played was Horde of the Dragon Queen, which was like the first official thing they released for 5th edition. And it was an awful adventure that I could go on for a while about why. But the first thing I really remember was another guy at the table absolutely ruining it for everybody at every opportunity. So it's to some extent a little bit crazy that I enjoyed it as much as I did with that.
Yeah, I think my second character was a turtle monk, and I leaned into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always a good way to start it for like a brand new person. It's like, hey, here's this fictional character. I can make them for you. It's like, oh, yeah, sure, why not?
These guys weren't as nice. They were just like, have your character ready by X.
We're starting on Saturday. Get it ready.
Why haven't you responded?
Yeah.
Have a backstory.
You haven't been on Discord all week. We're starting tomorrow. Need your sheet.
So the group that you consistently play with, what's the favorite monster to encounter? Or is there one that's particularly exciting or memorable? Like, oh damn, this again?
Yeah, I don't know if we have like a consistent one, because if I feel like I can remember our last fight with something, I will try and not use it. I very much so I like to shake it up. I use monsters as starting points and will change around their stat blocks like crazy. So even if we fought them 6 months ago, well, now they're an ooze version. So deal with that.
Yeah.
But for like a recent memorable one is we fought a Kraken. They fought a Kraken. I was a Kraken, I guess. And that was really great just because they were level 9 and a Kraken, I believe, is challenge rating 23 or something like that. So it was this like awesome encounter where they needed to get the hell out of there, but they were like in an enclosed temple that was basically going to collapse soon. And they had a Kraken trying to keep them there. So those types of settings where when I was putting it together, I'm like, this is probably too tough and I might kill the entire party, but they find ways to just keep in it and, succeed in whatever way they can. Those are always going to be the real memorable ones.
I still have PTSD from Solid's water elemental episode. That was Solid, if you want to elaborate on that, dude.
Every time, yeah. I mean, when we first started playing, it was a lot of drinking and playing Dungeons and Dragons online with each other. And I decided to get blackout drunk one night as a DM. And we're on a ship, I think, from what I can remember. Yeah, and I just decided, hey, you're going to fight these water elementals that are going to come on board. And then I was absolutely blackout drunk at that point. And it was just, okay, you hit the water elemental, cool. Okay, you hit it was like, what, 2 hours of that, you guys fighting water elementals after water elemental after water elemental?
There's like 3 more water elementals come over the side of the bridge.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's the running meme of the group. It's pretty funny.
To make it, if you feel better, I recently had an encounter that it really, really fell flat with earth elementals, actually, because they're just super boring to fight when you actually look at what they have. It's like resistance to absolutely everything except for thunder damage that they're vulnerable to, and it just turned into this absolute slog of like an hour and a half. Yeah, but like you get an opportunity attack if they try and do that, and they're always going to be in melee range, so they're just not interesting. They're very boring fights. So I totally get that. Sometimes you get into yours was because you're drunk, but sometimes it's because you put together a bad encounter.
There are plenty of bad encounters.
Yeah.
What would you say is your favorite monster? Like out of all of D&D, like any edition. I don't know if you've looked at previous editions of D&D as well, because I know they kind of mix them up every once in a while. Do you have like a favorite monster at all?
I do, and I've never actually used it. It's the Nagpa. The Nagpa is like this wizard, or actually a group of 13 wizards who were cursed by the Raven Queen, which is the extent of the like lore and history I know, because I don't try and keep up with that stuff unless I have to. But they're cursed and they are unable to learn new things unless it is from a destroyed civilization. So it's like their entire goal to just destroy cities and bring them to collapse. But they're not particularly powerful on their own. So they're not like dragons who can just come in and torch everything and go to the library and just read for the next 100 years until they go to the next one. So they're these great big bad evil guys that you can set up to just be pulling the strings for everything. And we talk about them all the time in the show. They were like the third episode we covered them, and now we try and pull in every monster, well, every ish monster that we use, and try and explain like, how would the Nagpa use this monster?
They always remind me of the Skeksis from Dark Crystal.
It's a direct ripoff.
Yeah.
Direct ripoff for sure.
Just hunched over bird people. It's like, oh, all right.
That's real funny. So now I know you said that you started out playing, in person with each other. Now with like COVID and everything, do you guys play online together? Do you guys still meet up with each other?
Yeah, we've been playing online since I guess probably April now, around then. We plan on going back at some point here, but we're still doing online.
Nice.
Okay. Do you prefer in person, or do you prefer
Definitely.
online?
Yeah, no, I definitely prefer in person. There's something just so much more fun to me about sitting around and looking at the minis on the table and just the quickly drawn battle mats that I put together, and like I painted minis for everybody that like they got from Hero Forge, so it's like it always feels very personal with theirs and everything. And just sitting around and rolling dice, it's just nicer. I mean, there's so many headaches when it comes to online that I would never prefer it, but it's better than no D&D.
Yeah. Now, you said that you guys have like minis and battle mats. Do you guys generally play with like grid based, like for everything? Do you guys do grid based for battles? Do you do a lot of Theater of the Mind stuff as well?
Yeah, only do grids when it's in battle.
Okay.
I never really understood the point of setting up an entire town just to like move your mini from one building to another.
Yeah.
I think that's just people who love building terrain like as a hobby in itself, which is, again, totally fine, but wow, I do not have that time or money. But that said, I honestly cannot play Theater of Mind 5th edition. I don't think it works very well. There's so many particulars when it comes to spells with distance and how many people you're engaged with and whether or not you're provoking opportunity attack and how far away is this person, that when you try and do it with Theater of Mind for like quick battles, sometimes I'll let it slide because it'll take more time to set things up than to actually run the combat. But when we're having something intense, I want to be able to see it and have that control over everything.
That's what we run into is like, how far away am I from that guy? Or that's like the main question, because we're trying to set up a spell or something, or how far can I move? How close will I be to that?
Right. And now it's up to the DM to just like make it up. Yeah. Right. Be like, I guess you're like, I don't know,
like 55 feet away.
Yeah. And like the more enemies that you add to the fight, the more just abstract everything becomes. And I mean, again, we're all about just like making combat as hard as possible and as rigorous as possible. So when you get to these abstract moments, it kind of kills it a little bit for us.
Yeah.
Now, did you start out with 5th edition, or did you guys start out with like 4th edition? Maybe played 3.5 at all? Have you tried other versions?
I I started with 5th edition. I've actually never played any other versions or editions of D&D. I've played other tabletops at this point, but only ever 5th edition. Kevin and Will both started with 3.5 and then played a lot of D&D Next, which is what they basically called the beta version of D&D 5th edition, which was a very different game as I understand.
Yeah, it definitely was. I as well started out with 3.5, and what you're saying about like how Theater of the Mind doesn't really work with the battles and stuff, I totally agree with that. Like 3.5, I used to play only Theater of the Mind with the group that I played with, and so battles were always so complicated. It's like, okay, you're here. Oh, how far away am I? You're 45 feet away. Like, it was very, very difficult because that's when they really started getting into the minis. They even had they had a whole section in the book about grid-based battling where you can draw like line of sight for people and everything. And yeah, I agree. I think grids are much better for battles. Now, Theater of the Mind for outside role playing and stuff is obviously a lot more fun, I feel like. But
right, and like I mean, it's not even that you have to because 5th edition has the line of sight rules as well, and it has like a whole section on grid combat. And if you don't want to follow all of that to a T, I think it's fine. But it leaves too many things up in the air for me, and too many things to keep track of. Like, oh my gosh, I'm already trying to think of like what spells do I want to cast, and I'm concentrating on this, and if I drop that now, then that person's going to be free, and you have enough on your plate in the first place without having to remember. All right, are there 2 things next to me, and are they right next to me, or what attacked me last time? It's just I don't know how people do it. Even paper clips on like graph paper, I would rather.
Just find some old chess pieces somewhere.
yeah,
Right. It doesn't have to be like an expensive thing by any means.
Now, I know you were you tweeted the other day that you were interested in maybe running like a super high level campaign where a wizard would break the whole campaign pretty much. Is there anything that you're planning in the future? Maybe going over something on the podcast about some high level stuff? I know we were kind of dabbling with the idea of maybe doing like a one shot with 20th level characters, but
So yeah, my current foray into high level is a joke campaign that we talked about on the podcast, and a fan actually asked if they could run it for us. It's called the Swole Coast, and the entire point is there's no magic at all. It's just a bunch of big meathead dudes being big meathead dudes, and that, in my opinion, is really the only and best way to run level 20 campaigns. Only because if you know anything about 20th level, once you get like 9th level spells, the game just breaks. I mean, there's no way around it. You've got like Wish, and that just fixes 90% of problems, or you're just so powerful that unless you continue to raise the stakes to crazy, multiplanar levels, it just falls apart. Now, that's not to say you can't do it at all. I just think there has to be a bit of a build up to it, and it's just a different game almost.
I know, like
level 20 are gods, basically.
Yeah, once you get to that high of a level, it really becomes a burden on the DM to balance. Right. And how many Tarrasques can I throw at this party before it's like redundant, or how many beholders can I have?
If the party can fly, then they can take out 1 million Tarrasques. That's all that matters.
And how much anti-magic can you have on the field without it being like, well, you're just shutting down my character completely. It's boring.
Right. And that was the most recent issue I ran into. Is I run I won't say a low magic world, but it's a little bit more stripped down. I don't want 10 people in a city to be able to know magic. It's like a prestigious thing to learn. So when I was trying to tackle the idea of a war in this world, which is like the time skip back that we're going to, I tried to think really long and hard about, what level could I have spellcasters before things are just broken. And as I mentioned in the tweet, but like a druid with 8th level spells has Earthquake. Earthquake is not a spell that you want the other side to have in a war. It basically just ends it. 100 people, boom, they're dead. So the only way to combat it is, as you said, you just keep shutting it down. And it's like, oh, well, the other side has casters that also are casting counter spell at you. And, what's the fun if you're just shutting down everybody's build?
It's funny. I saw like the Sage Advice with Jeremy Crawford stuff. they were like, how many counter spells can you counterspell? And he's like, as many as like spell slots you have. If you keep cranking up the spell slots, you can literally have 2 casters sitting there just counterspelling back and forth and ping-ponging a spell back and forth. I'm like, that's crazy. Like,
well, yeah, as long as you have enough casters, because it does take your reaction at least to cast counterspell.
Right.
But yeah. You can just have like a circle of them, just like one person casts a spell, and then you just go down the line of counterspelling, counterspell.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Well, Joe, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Where can we find you, Kevin, and Will online?
Easiest place is monstersandmulticlass.com. That'll give you absolutely everything. But we're also on Twitter. That's at monsters_multi. And then Reddit, if you're on there, is our subreddit is our Monsters and Multiclass. Okay. So that should be everything.
And what do you have coming up? Anything? I know the Swole Coast is coming. Do you have different plans for different podcasts or anything like that you're going to do?
I think we're releasing our first episode of Swole Coast soon, which is like our first foray into actual plays. It is not heavily edited, and we honestly didn't care that much because there's enough actual plays. If people want to hear it, cool. Right. But we are coming up near the end of the multi-classes, and I'm hoping we're going to do something special once we finish those up.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing it. Spawn Camp Council, thanks everyone for watching and listening to Campfire Tales, and we will see you soon. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.